Look at me and tell me, what do you see? A seductress who destroyed empires? A prostitute who bewitched generals? Or perhaps a tragic queen from a stage play? You think you know me because you've seen my face on worn coins or portrayed by Hollywood actresses? But the truth is that the world fears a woman who ruled with her mind before she ruled with her body. I am Cleopatra VII, the last active pharaoh of Egypt, and before you judge me, listen to the confession of the one who watched the sunset over 3,000 years of history. Would you have the courage to do what I did to save your people? Would you have the cunning to turn your own destiny into a weapon? I was born in 69 BC into a world that was already collapsing. Alexandria, my city, was the glass heart of the Mediterranean. Beautiful, vast, and terrifyingly fragile, I am descended from Ptolemy I Soter, a general of Alexander the Great. Yes, my blood is Macedonian, Greek to the marrow, and not Egyptian, as many believe. I was born into a dynasty of kings who married their own sisters to keep the blood pure, a web of incest and betrayal that produced heirs too young to rule and too greedy to live. My father, Ptolemy Thasunthind Auletes, the flute player, was a man who kept his throne through massive bribes to Rome and dependence on foreign military power. I grew up in palace corridors, listening to whispers of assassinations and conspiracies. I watched my own sister, Berenice, steal the throne and be executed by our father as soon as he returned from exile. At 18, the weight of the crown fell upon me. By my father's will, I was to co-rule with my younger brother Ptolemy XIII, a boy of only 10 years. But Egypt was broken. The treasury was empty, the economy in ruins, and Rome, the hungry beast of the West, stared at our fertile lands with a greed nothing could satisfy. I was not like my ancestors, who refused to speak the language of the people they ruled. While they isolated themselves in aristocratic Greek, I immersed myself in the mysteries of Alexandria. I learned between 5 and 9 languages: Greek, Egyptian, Aramaic, Hebrew, Arabic, so that no diplomat or priest could lie to me without my knowing. I was a polymath in a world that wanted me to be nothing more than an ornament. I studied mathematics, philosophy, and alchemy in the halls of the Great Library. Arab historians would later call me the virtuous scholar, recognizing in me a wise woman who elevated the status of scientists. But in my palace, I was surrounded by hyenas. The eunuch Pothinus, the general Achilles, and the rhetorician Theodotus, the advisors of my brother, saw my intelligence as a threat. They wanted a puppet, I wanted an empire. In 48 BC, I was expelled from Alexandria, forced to flee into the Syrian desert as an exile. Can you imagine the fear? To be alone, with nothing but your mind and a small mercenary force, while the army of your own brother waits at the border to kill you? But it was there, in the silence of the sands, that I understood that destiny is not something you wait for, it is something you shape. When I received word that Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, had arrived in Alexandria, I knew it was my only chance. I could not enter the city with an army. I would be slaughtered before reaching the harbor, so I used the one thing my enemies could not predict: my audacity. I was rolled into a carpet, or a bundle of linen, the details vary depending on who tells the gossip, and carried by a loyal servant through enemy lines into Caesar's quarters. When that carpet was unrolled and I rose before him, covered in dust yet adorned with the dignity of a goddess, I was not merely asking for help, I was proposing a deal. Caesar was 52 years old, weary of civil wars, and desperately in need of Egypt's gold to pay his legions. I was 21, robbed of my throne, and held the key to the wealth he desired. They say I seduced him. I say we recognized each other. We were 2 orators, 2 strategists, 2 human beings who understood that power is the only language the world respects. With Caesar's support, my brother was defeated and drowned in the Nile, and I reclaimed what was mine by right. But the price of the crown is a loneliness you will never understand. I had to marry another younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, to maintain appearances, while carrying in my womb Caesar's son, Caesarion, the Little Caesar. I was not just a queen, I was forging a dynasty that would unite East and West, a dream that would make Rome tremble in fear. But power is a banquet where the dishes are seasoned with poison, and I had barely begun to taste my triumph. The empire I built was not made of gold alone, but of symbols. I knew that image is the foundation of power. While the Romans painted me as an exotic courtesan, I presented myself to my people as the living incarnation of the goddess Isis. I did not rule by laws alone. I ruled through faith and admiration. Alexandria under my command became the beacon of the world. I revitalized trade with Arabia and even India, turning Egypt into the richest nation in the Mediterranean and the last to resist Rome's voracious expansion. My days were consumed by economic reforms and ruthless diplomacy. I reduced taxes to win the favor of the peasants and invested in Nile irrigation infrastructure, for I knew the people's stomach is the guarantee of peace. I presided over intellectual seminars at the Mausion, debating medicine and chemistry with the greatest scholars of my time. But behind this cultural brilliance was an iron hand. I did not hesitate to eliminate those who threatened stability. When my second brother husband, Ptolemy XIII, became an obstacle, he disappeared by poisoning, clearing the way for my son Caesarion to become my co-regent. I was a mother protecting her offspring, and my offspring was the future of Rome and Egypt united. My stay in Rome, living in Caesar's villa, was a game of mirrors. I was at the heart of the beast, surrounded by senators who hated me, like Cicero, who called my insolence unbearable. But I had Caesar. He placed a golden statue of me in the temple of Venus Genetrix, associating me with the very ancestress of his lineage. But the Ides of March, 44 BC, changed everything. When Caesar's blood stained the Senate floor, I knew my life and my sons were in danger. We fled back to Egypt, sailing against the wind of history as Rome plunged into another bloody civil war. Then came Mark Antony. He was Caesar's military heir, a man of voracious appetites, indomitable courage, and a vanity I knew exactly how to exploit. When he summoned me to Tarsus in 41 BC, I did not go as a vassal. I went as a goddess. I sailed down the river Cydnus on a barge with a gilded stern, purple sails perfuming the air, and silver oars striking the water in rhythm with music. I was dressed as Aphrodite, surrounded by boys dressed as Cupids, and the spectacle was so overwhelming that the crowd abandoned Antony in the forum to watch the Queen of Egypt pass by. Antony never stood a chance. He fell in love with me like a youth, losing his head completely. We created the Society of the Inimitable Livers, a circle of luxury and banquets, where each day outdid the last in extravagance. But make no mistake, amid the laughter and wine, there was pure strategy. I needed his armies to expand my kingdom's borders and protect my children. He needed my wealth to finance his campaigns against the Parthians. Together, we rebuilt the ancient Ptolemaic Empire. At the donations of Alexandria in 34 BC, we distributed lands and kingdoms as if we owned the world. I declared Caesarion the true heir of Caesar, the King of Kings, and granted my 3 children with Antony, Alexander Helios, Cleopatra Selene, and Ptolemy Philadelphus, territories stretching from Armenia to Cyrenaica. I was at my peak. Egypt was once again a global power, but the gleam of gold blinds men to the darkness that approaches. In Rome, a cold and calculating young man named Octavian turned every one of my actions into propaganda against me. He portrayed me as an Eastern sorceress who had turned a Roman general into a degenerate slave. The loneliness of power began to weigh on me. I saw betrayal in every shadow. Mistakes were made. Antony, in his devotion to me, divorced Octavian's sister, giving him the perfect pretext for war. The world was too small for the two of us, Antony and Octavian. I could smell the storm in the air, the scent of iron and death rising from the sea. Everything collapsed at Actium in 31 BC. The Ionian Sea became the graveyard of my ambitions. Octavian and his general Agrippa surrounded us with their light maneuverable galleys, while our heavy Macedonian ships were trapped like wounded beasts. In a moment of panic, or perhaps of desperate calculation to save the treasury, I ordered my fleet to retreat. Antony, in an act of madness that sealed his dishonor, abandoned his men and followed me, leaving his army and navy behind. We returned to Alexandria as ghosts of ourselves. We formed a new society, the Companions unto Death. Laughter now tasted bitter, like ashes. As Octavian advanced, I prepared myself. I built a massive mausoleum and filled it with all my treasures: gold, jewels, spices, ebony, and linen. If I fell, Egypt's wealth would burn with me. I tried to negotiate my children's safety, offering even my own life in exchange for their throne. But Octavian was a monster of ice. He wanted the total annihilation of my lineage. In August of 30,000 BC, the end knocked at the door. When Octavian's forces entered Alexandria, the betrayal was complete. My fleets and cavalry deserted before my eyes. Antony, receiving the false news that I was already dead, plunged his sword into his own belly. He was brought to my mausoleum, hoisted up through the windows with ropes, and died in my arms, staining my garments with the blood of the man I loved, or at least the man who was my greatest ally. I was captured. Octavian visited me, and I saw in his eyes that he did not want my surrender. He wanted my humiliation. He intended to take me to Rome as a trophy, parading me in golden chains before the mob that called me a harlot. I told him, I will not be led in triumph. Death was my final political decision. I would not allow the son of a Roman banker to decide the end of Alexander's lineage. Whether it was the bite of an Egyptian asp hidden in a basket of figs, or a cocktail of poisons, hemlock, aconite, and opium, that I prepared with my scientific knowledge matters little to history. What matters is that I died as I lived, in full control of my narrative. I was found upon my throne, adorned with my royal diadem, with my faithful servants Iras and Charmian dying at my feet. Charmian, in her final breath, told Octavian's guards that my act was worthy of a descendant of so many kings. Octavian completed his vengeance. He ordered the execution of my Caesarion, claiming that 2 Caesars are too many, extinguishing the last spark of the dream of unity between our worlds. My other children were taken to Rome, and Egypt became a mere province, the personal granary of the emperor. But he could not erase who I was. My legacy does not lie in Rome's lies, but in the silence of the centuries. In the East, I was remembered as the scientist, the physician who studied the mysteries of life and death. My daughter, Cleopatra Selene, survived and ruled in Mauritania, carrying Egypt's culture and gods beyond the sands. History is written by the victors, but memory belongs to those who had the courage to fight the inevitable. I am proof that power is not merely a matter of armies, but of will and intellect. Let my end serve as a lesson to you. Greatness does not lie in never falling, but in ensuring that even in the fall, your name continues to haunt the sleep of those who tried to destroy you.